Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome back to the channel. Today we are embarking on an incredibly ambitious, profoundly significant, and truly extensive journey, a comprehensive exploration of ancient Israel. This isn't merely a brief overview or a quick summary. We're dedicating the next couple of hours to meticulously unraveling the intricate, multi-layered tapestry of a civilization whose story has left an indelible, transformative mark on the very fabric of global history, culture, and spirituality. We will delve into its earliest, often debated origins, trace its remarkable and dramatic rise, witness its profound political and spiritual transformations, and ultimately understand the enduring, multifaceted legacy that continues to resonate across continents and millennia. It's a narrative brimming with compelling, complex figures, pivotal, often cataclysmic events, and revolutionary ideas that have fundamentally shaped the world we inhabit and the way billions of people perceive the divine and humanity's place within it. Our exploration will draw upon a rich array of disciplines, including historical scholarship, archaeological findings, literary analysis of ancient texts, and theological insights, offering a holistic understanding of this pivotal civilization. We aim to present a nuanced perspective, acknowledging both the biblical accounts and the contributions of modern research, fostering a deeper appreciation for the complexities of the past. But before we fully immerse ourselves in the distant, captivating past, I genuinely want to take a moment to connect with each and every one of you watching right now. How has your day been unfolding? Please take a moment, reflect, and share a brief update in the comments below. Did anything particularly noteworthy happen? Was it a day of quiet productivity, perhaps filled with small victories, or did you encounter unexpected challenges that tested your resilience and required your full attention? I'd genuinely love to hear about it, as your experiences enrich our community. And while you're down there, I'm also incredibly curious to know one specific goal you are striving towards for the future. It could be anything at all, a deeply personal aspiration, a significant professional milestone you're working towards, a small step towards self-improvement, or a grand, overarching vision for your life that keeps you motivated. Sharing our dreams and aspirations can be remarkably empowering, fostering a sense of community and mutual inspiration among us. And of course, if you appreciate the depth, the detail, and the sheer scope of this extensive historical journey, if you find genuine value in the meticulous research and effort invested to bring these narratives to life, please consider hitting that subscribe button and becoming a cherished, integral member of our growing community. Your support is truly invaluable and directly enables the creation of more in-depth, high-quality content like this for everyone to enjoy. Now, let us begin our journey, stretching back through the mists of time to a land often described as the quintessential crossroads of the ancient world. Envision a narrow, elongated strip of land, strategically positioned at the nexus of three vast continents, Asia, Africa, and Europe. To its east lies the immense arid expanse of the Arabian Desert, a formidable barrier and a source of nomadic incursions, while to its west, the shimmering, boundless waters of the Mediterranean Sea stretch into the horizon, offering vital trade routes and inviting maritime powers from distant lands. To the north, the towering, often snow-capped peaks of Lebanon and Syria form a formidable natural barrier, home to powerful city-states and empires like the Arameans, and to the south, the parched wilderness of the Sinai gradually gives way. To the fertile Nile Delta and the colossal ancient civilization of Egypt, a perennial superpower whose influence extended far into Canaan. This utterly unique geographical reality meant that this land, known broadly as Canaan, was perpetually situated at the confluence of competing imperial ambitions, caught directly between the colossal expansionist empires of Mesopotamia, such as the formidable Assyrians and the mighty Babylonians, and the enduring ancient power of Egypt. This constant geopolitical tension, the The relentless ebb and flow of imperial might profoundly influenced the political structures, the economic activities, the social organization, and even the religious development of the diverse peoples who eventually came to call it home, forcing them to navigate complex alliances and threats, often becoming vassal states or battlegrounds. For these larger powers, constantly adapting to shifting hegemonies and cultural currents, the land's strategic importance made it a coveted prize, a bridge connecting major ancient civilizations, and a conduit for goods, ideas, and armies. Its varied topography also contributed to distinct regional identities and economic specializations, from the olive groves of the Shephelah to the date palms of the Jordan Valley. Major ancient trade routes like the Via Maris and the King's Highway traverse this territory, making it a hub for commerce and cultural exchange, but also a frequent target for invading armies. The Fertile Crescent, of which Canaan was a crucial part, was a cradle of civilization, witnessing the earliest developments in agriculture, writing, and urban living. The land itself is characterized by an astonishing diversity of topography within a relatively confined area, creating distinct ecological and cultural zones. We find the fertile coastal plains, such as the Plain of Sharon and the Philistine Plain, ideal for intensive agriculture and bustling trade, contrasting sharply with the rugged limestone-rich Central Highlands, which offered natural defenses, a more isolated existence, and distinct cultural development for communities like those in Judea and Samaria. The deep geological rift valley of the Jordan River, flowing south from the Sea of Galilee to the Hypersaline Dead Sea, created a unique and often challenging ecosystem supporting different forms of life and human settlement along its banks, from lush oases to arid salt flats. Further south, the stark, beautiful, and challenging Negev Desert presented a landscape demanding immense resilience, specialized knowledge of water sources, and adaptability for its inhabitants, often supporting semi-nomadic pastoralism and specialized trade routes for copper and other minerals. This varied terrain meant that different communities adopted distinct lifestyles. Settled agriculturalists thrived in the fertile valleys and plains, cultivating staple grains like wheat and barley, olives for oil, and grapes for wine, forming the backbone of their economy and leading to the development of urban centers, while pastoral nomads grazed their flocks of sheep and goats in the hills and arid regions, moving seasonally in search of pasture and water, maintaining a more mobile existence, and often interacting with settled populations through trade or conflict. The climate, too, played an absolutely critical role with its distinct wet winter season, bringing precious rainfall and long, dry summer season, often leading to drought and famine. Rainfall was not merely a meteorological phenomenon. It was often perceived as a direct blessing or a punitive curse from the divine, dictating the very survival, prosperity, and even the spiritual outlook of the inhabitants, leading to fervent prayers for rain and thanksgiving for bountiful harvests. Control over essential resources, particularly perennial water sources, fertile land, and strategic passes that controlled trade routes, was a constant source of both conflict and uneasy cooperation among the various groups inhabiting this vibrant, often volatile, and highly desirable region, shaping alliances and rivalries and influencing settlement patterns. The presence of diverse microclimates within a small area allowed for a wide range of agricultural products, from Mediterranean crops to desert flora, influencing dietary habits and trade networks. The Judean wilderness, a stark and dramatic landscape, served as a refuge for outlaws and prophets alike, shaping their spiritual experiences. The varied topography also fostered a mosaic of cultures and dialects, contributing to the rich tapestry of ancient Canaanite society before the emergence of Israel. Our narrative, in its earliest conceptualizations and foundational texts, does not commence with the establishment of grand kingdoms or fortified cities, but rather with the compelling and deeply significant stories of wandering patriarchs. These narratives, meticulously preserved within the Hebrew Bible, paint a vivid and evocative picture of nomadic or semi-nomadic groups, led by iconic archetypal figures such as Abraham, his son Isaac, and his grandson Jacob, who was later renamed Israel, becoming the progenitor of the 12 tribes. They are depicted as journeying through this very land of Canaan, making profound and transformative covenants with a singular, transcendent, all-powerful, and uniquely personal God, Yahweh. These covenants established the spiritual lineage, the divine election, and the unique identity of what would ultimately become the Israelite people. The promises made to Abraham of numerous descendants, a specific land for his posterity, and universal blessing through his lineage to all nations form the theological bedrock of Israelite identity and their enduring, often contested connection to Canaan. This period, often associated with the Middle Bronze Age, roughly 1550 BCE, saw the emergence of complex urban centers in Canaan, alongside nomadic pastoralists, suggesting a dynamic social landscape where different groups coexisted and interacted, while contemporary archaeology and rigorous historical scholarship engage in ongoing debates regarding the precise historicity of every minute detail within these ancient accounts, often finding general cultural parallels and evidence of nomadic groups in the region but lacking direct corroboration for individual figures. Their immense cultural, religious, and identity-forming significance is utterly beyond dispute. They provide the bedrock of a collective identity, fostering a profound sense of divine election, a unique purpose, and an unbreakable spiritual connection to the land itself, viewed as a divine inheritance and a place of destiny. These earliest narratives articulate a divine promise, a destiny inextricably linked to this specific geographical space, a promise that would fuel the aspirations, guide the actions, and define the struggles of countless generations to come, providing a powerful sense of continuity and future hope that transcended immediate circumstances. The profound emphasis on family, on an unbroken lineage traced through specific individuals, and on an exclusive and personal relationship with the divine, sets the stage for the unparalleled distinctiveness of Israelite identity, differentiating them sharply from the polytheistic and often localized cults of their neighbors, who worshipped a pantheon of gods associated with natural forces and fertility, often with less emphasis on moral conduct. Their wanderings, their trials, like the near sacrifice of Isaac, a test of ultimate faith, and their moments of divine encounter, like Jacob's dream at Bethel or his wrestling with an angel at Peniel marking a transformation, all contribute to a powerful narrative of origin, divine guidance, and ultimate destiny. The concept of hesed, steadfast love or covenant loyalty, begins to emerge in these narratives, defining the reciprocal relationship between God and his chosen people, emphasizing faithfulness and devotion as core values that underpin their very existence and their unique relationship with the divine. The story of Joseph, Jacob's son, further illustrates this period, detailing the descent of the nascent Israelite family into Egypt, setting the stage for the next major epoch in their history. The patriarchal narratives also introduce the theme of the stranger and sojourner, a concept that would later inform Israelite law regarding the treatment of foreigners. The covenant with Abraham, specifically, introduced the idea of a chosen people through whom all nations would be blessed, establishing a universal dimension to their particularistic identity. Following these deeply rooted patriarchal traditions, the narrative shifts dramatically to the seminal and transformative story of the Exodus. This is arguably the most iconic, identity-defining, and theologically central event in the collective memory of the Israelite people, a harrowing period of brutal enslavement in ancient Egypt, depicted as forced labor on monumental building. projects under harsh conditions, followed by a miraculous and divinely orchestrated liberation led by the towering figure of Moses, culminating in a challenging 40-year sojourn through the vast, arid, and unforgiving wilderness of Sinai. The biblical account details the 10 plagues inflicted upon Egypt, each demonstrating Yahweh's power over the Egyptian deities and Pharaoh himself, culminating in the death of the firstborn and the miraculous crossing of the Red Sea, an event that forever cemented God's role as Redeemer and Deliverer from oppression, establishing a paradigm for future liberation and salvation. During this arduous journey, at the foot of the awe-inspiring Mount Sinai, the Israelites are said to have received the Torah, the divine law, directly from God, amidst thunder, lightning, smoke, and the sound of a trumpet, a dramatic theophany that instilled both awe and fear. This monumental event unequivocally established their covenant relationship with Yahweh and provided the comprehensive ethical, moral, social, and ritualistic framework for their nascent society, transforming a collection of freed slaves into a nation under divine law distinct from all others. The 10 Commandments, in particular, represent an unparalleled foundational code of conduct that would not only profoundly shape Israelite society, but also exert an immense and lasting influence on Western legal systems, ethical thought, and moral philosophy for millennia, emphasizing principles like reverence for God, respect for life, honesty, and justice, forming the core of their legal system and moral obligations. The Exodus narrative transcends a mere historical account. It is a potent myth of liberation, a powerful testament to divine intervention, and a constant visceral reminder of their unique identity as a people chosen, redeemed, and set apart by God. It instilled within them a deep-seated sense of justice, empathy, and compassion, born directly from the bitter memory of their own oppression and suffering, leading to laws protecting the vulnerable, the stranger, and the marginalized, reflecting their own past experience as sojourners. The wilderness period, often perceived as a time of rigorous testing, purification, and spiritual formation, served to forge a disparate and often fractious collection of tribes into a cohesive, albeit sometimes rebellious people, learning obedience and dependence on God's miraculous provision, manna, quail, water from the rock, and developing a unique religious culture. It was during this time that the concept of a portable sanctuary, the tabernacle, was meticulously designed and constructed according to divine specifications, symbolizing God's continued presence among them even in their nomadic state, and providing a central place for worship, sacrifice, and the manifestation of divine glory, further solidifying their unique religious practices and communal bonds. The detailed laws concerning purity, sacrifice, social justice, and the organization of the community found in the books of Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers laid the groundwork for a distinct way of life centered on holiness and covenant fidelity, setting them apart from surrounding nations and establishing a unique legal and moral framework that would guide them for centuries. The theological concept of God's active involvement in human history, particularly in delivering the oppressed, became a cornerstone of their faith, inspiring future generations. The journey through the desert also served as a period of national formation, where a shared identity and purpose were forged through common hardship and divine guidance. The legal codes given at Sinai, including the Covenant Code and the Holiness Code, provided detailed regulations for every aspect of Israelite life, from civil disputes to ritual purity, establishing a society governed by divine precepts. After the extended wilderness wanderings, the Israelites are depicted as entering the promised land of Canaan, a process often described in the biblical narrative as a dramatic conquest under the leadership of Joshua. This period is generally associated with the late Bronze Age collapse and the early Iron Age, roughly 1200–1000 BCE, a time of significant upheaval across the Near East, marked by the decline of major empires and the emergence of new peoples. However, contemporary archaeological evidence and nuanced scholarly interpretations suggest a far more intricate and multifaceted picture, perhaps a gradual infiltration, a protracted period of settlement, and a complex process of assimilation, alongside or even within existing Canaanite populations, rather than a swift, total, and overwhelming military overthrow. Some theories propose a peasant revolt against Canaanite city-states where marginalized groups within Canaan joined the emerging Israelite identity, or a slow process of internal migration and cultural differentiation, where distinct Israelite identity gradually formed within the highlands, distinct from the lowland Canaanite culture, possibly driven by new agricultural techniques like terracing and a shared religious ideology. This ensuing period, spanning several centuries and known as the Time of the Judges, was characterized by a decentralized tribal society. There was no overarching central government, no hereditary king, and no unified national army, leading to the famous phrase, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes," highlighting the moral and political chaos and the absence of central authority, leading to internal strife and vulnerability. Instead, charismatic local leaders, often military figures or divinely inspired individuals like Deborah, a prophetess and military leader, who rallied the tribes against Canaanite oppression, demonstrating female leadership and strategic acumen. Gideon, who defeated the Midianites with a small divinely chosen force, emphasizing God's power over human might and the rejection of kingship. Jephthah, whose tragic vow led to his daughter's sacrifice, illustrating the dangers of rash promises and the complexities of tribal law. And Samson, a powerful but flawed hero whose exploits against the Philistines were legendary, but whose personal failings were equally prominent, would periodically rise up to deliver their respective tribes from immediate external threats, primarily from neighboring peoples, such as the formidable Philistines, who were technologically advanced with iron weaponry and a strong military organization, establishing a pentapolis of cities along the coast. Other threats came from the aggressive Ammonites, the opportunistic Moabites, and various Canaanite city-states. It was a turbulent, often chaotic era, marked by recurring cycles of apostasy from Yahweh, subsequent oppression by foreign powers, as divine judgment, heartfelt repentance, and eventual divine deliverance through these judges. The tribes frequently acted independently, and regrettable intertribal conflicts, such as the near annihilation of the tribe of Benjamin due to a heinous crime, were not uncommon, highlighting the fragile nature of their unity and the growing need for central authority and a stable political structure. Despite the conspicuous absence of a unified political structure, a shared religious identity, centered around the exclusive worship of Yahweh, began to solidify and deepen, distinguishing them increasingly from the polytheistic and often fertility-oriented practices of their Canaanite neighbors, who worshipped deities like Baal and Asherah, often through elaborate cultic rituals and sacred prostitution. The Ark of the Covenant, a sacred chest believed to contain the tablets of the divine law, served as an exceptionally powerful symbol of their unique divine connection and a central focal point for their worship, often residing in tribal centers, like Shiloh, reinforcing a sense of shared heritage and spiritual unity, even in the absence of a permanent temple. This was a period of raw, emergent identity, forged in the crucible of constant struggle, internal strife, and the ongoing arduous effort to establish themselves securely in a highly contested and often hostile land, laying the groundwork for future national aspirations and the eventual desire for a king who could provide stability and defense against their increasingly powerful enemies. The narratives of the judges also reveal the challenges of maintaining covenant fidelity amidst the allure of surrounding cultures and the constant pressure of external threats. Archaeological sites like Khirbet Qeiyafa offer insights into early Iron Age settlement patterns in the Judean highlands, contributing to the debate on Israelite origins. The Merneptah stele, an Egyptian inscription from the late 13th century BCE, contains the earliest known extra-biblical reference to Israel, indicating a distinct group in Canaan at that time. The persistent and escalating external threats, particularly from the highly organized and technologically superior Philistines, who possessed a monopoly on iron weaponry and a formidable military organization, eventually led to a growing and urgent desire among the Israelite tribes for a centralized leadership. They yearned for a single king who could effectively unite the disparate tribes and provide a consistent, robust defense against their formidable adversaries, a fundamental shift from their decentralized tribal system to a more cohesive national entity. This profound yearning for a monarchy marked a pivotal and irreversible transition in Israelite history, a move away from a charismatic tribal leadership to a more structured dynastic system. The revered prophet Samuel, initially resistant to the idea, viewing it as a rejection of divine rule and a step towards human fallibility, ultimately, under divine instruction and popular demand, anointed Saul as the very first king of Israel. Saul, a figure of imposing stature and initial military prowess, was chosen for his leadership qualities and early successes against the Ammonites and Philistines, demonstrating his capacity for military command and rallying the tribes. However, his reign was tragically fraught with challenges, marked by internal struggles, instances of disobedience to divine commands as interpreted by Samuel, such as offering a sacrifice himself before Samuel arrived, or failing to utterly destroy the Amalekites as commanded, and ultimately a profound psychological decline, manifested in paranoia and fits of rage, culminating in his heroic but ultimately fatal death in battle against the Philistines on Mount Gilboa. A poignant end to his troubled reign. His story is a deeply poignant one, illustrating the immense pressures, the spiritual demands, and the inherent complexities placed upon the nascent monarchy and its inaugural ruler, highlighting the tension between divine authority and human kingship and the dangers of pride, disobedience, and mental anguish in leadership, a cautionary tale for future monarchs. Saul's inability to fully embrace his divine mandate and his struggle with personal insecurities ultimately paved the way for a new leader. The establishment of a standing army under Saul represented a significant departure from the ad hoc tribal levies of the Judges period. The narrative of Saul's rise and fall serves as a theological commentary on the nature of kingship and the importance of obedience to divine will. Following Saul's tragic demise, a new and charismatic figure emerged, one who would ascend to become the most celebrated and revered king in Israelite memory, David, a humble shepherd boy who famously defeated the Philistine giant Goliath with a sling and stone. Demonstrating faith and courage, David was not only a charismatic leader, but also a skilled warrior, a talented musician, and a prolific poet, credited with many psalms that express deep spiritual devotion and human struggle. His ascent to the throne was neither immediate nor without significant struggle, as he first ruled over the southern tribe of Judah for 7.5 years from Hebron, before skillfully unifying all the tribes of Israel under his dominion through a combination of military prowess, political acumen, and a reputation for justice and loyalty that earned him widespread support. David's reign is almost universally regarded as a golden age for ancient Israel, a period of unprecedented expansion, national unity, and cultural flourishing. He successfully subdued the formidable Philistines, significantly expanded Israel's borders through a series of decisive military campaigns against surrounding nations like the Arameans, Moabites, Ammonites, and Edomites, creating a regional mini-empire that stretched from the border of Egypt to the Euphrates. securing vital trade routes and establishing a powerful regional presence. Most crucially, he captured the ancient Jebusite city of Jerusalem, a neutral territory that had not belonged to any tribe, establishing it as his permanent capital. This act was profoundly significant, transforming Jerusalem into the undisputed political and religious heart of the nation, a city that would forever be inextricably associated with the Davidic dynasty and the tangible presence of God, becoming known as the City of David, and later Zion. David brought the sacred Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem with great celebration, further solidifying its religious preeminence and making it the spiritual center of the United Kingdom, though he was not permitted to build a permanent temple. His reign witnessed the establishment of a more organized central government, a professional standing army, and a burgeoning sense of cohesive national identity. Furthermore, God made an unconditional covenant with David, promising an eternal dynasty and a perpetual throne, a promise that would become a cornerstone of future messianic expectations and a source of enduring hope for the Jewish people through centuries of exile and dispersion, a promise of an everlasting kingdom and a righteous ruler. Despite his numerous accomplishments and his status as an ideal king, David's personal life was complex and at times deeply flawed, marked by moral failings, such as the affair with Bathsheba and the murder of Uriah, for which he was rebuked by the prophet Nathan, demonstrating the prophet's authority over the king, tragic family strife, like Absalom's rebellion, Amnon's rape of Tamar, and Adonijah's attempted usurpation, and political intrigue, all of which are candidly recounted in the biblical narrative, showcasing the human side of even the greatest figures and the consequences of sin, even for a man after God's own heart. This portrayal of a flawed but ultimately repentant hero adds a layer of profound realism and enduring humanity to his legendary status, making him a figure of both inspiration and cautionary tale, illustrating the burdens of power and the complexities of divine judgment and forgiveness. David's administrative innovations, including the census and the organization of the priesthood, further solidified the kingdom's structure. The Tel Dan Stele, an archaeological find from the 9th century BCE, provides extra-biblical evidence for the House of David, supporting the historical existence of his dynasty. His military prowess was evident in his successful campaigns against the Philistines, finally breaking their dominance over the region. David was succeeded by his son Solomon, whose reign is synonymous with unparalleled wisdom, immense wealth, and magnificent architectural achievements. Solomon inherited a vast, prosperous, and relatively stable kingdom, and he dedicated himself to consolidating and expanding upon his father's remarkable achievements. His most enduring and iconic legacy is undoubtedly the construction of the First Temple in Jerusalem, a magnificent edifice designed to house the sacred Ark of the Covenant and serve as the central exclusive place of worship for all Israel. This temple became the undisputed focal point of Israelite religious life, symbolizing God's tangible presence among his people and serving as a powerful unifying force, drawing pilgrims from across the land for major festivals like Passover, weeks, and tabernacles. The detailed descriptions of its construction, materials, precious cedar from Lebanon, imported stone, overlay of pure gold, dimensions, and furnishings in the biblical text highlight its grandeur and symbolic importance. As the dwelling place of God's name and the center of the sacrificial cult, a permanent structure replacing the portable tabernacle. Solomon also engaged in extensive and sophisticated diplomatic relations, forming strategic alliances through royal marriages, most famously with the daughter of Pharaoh, and establishing lucrative international trade routes that brought immense riches and exotic goods into the kingdom, including gold from Ophir, spices, and exotic animals, making Israel a significant economic power and a hub of regional commerce. His legendary reputation for profound wisdom, exemplified by his famous judgment of the two women claiming a child, and his vast knowledge of flora and fauna, attracted visitors from far and wide, including the famous Queen of Sheba, who came to test his intellect and witness his splendor, leaving deeply impressed by his wealth and sagacity. However, Solomon's reign, despite its grandeur and prosperity, also inadvertently sowed the seeds of future discord and eventual division. His ambitious building projects, including the temple, his opulent royal palace complex, which took longer to build than the temple, and numerous fortified cities like Megiddo, Hazor, and Gezer, which show monumental Solomonic gates in archaeology, along with his lavish lifestyle, required increasingly heavy taxation and the imposition of forced labor on his subjects, placing an escalating and resented burden on the populace, particularly the northern tribes. Furthermore, his many foreign wives, numbering in the hundreds and brought in for political alliances, often introduced their own deities and cultic practices, leading to the introduction of idolatrous worship within Jerusalem itself, building shrines for foreign gods, which was seen as a grave offense against the exclusive covenant with Yahweh and a spiritual compromise that angered God and led to divine judgment, as foretold by prophets. These internal pressures, combined with a growing resentment over the perceived favoritism shown to the tribe of Judah and the burden of his policies, set the stage for a dramatic and irreversible schism upon his death. Solomon's vast network of chariots and cavalry also indicated a significant military buildup, reflecting the kingdom's growing power and its engagement with regional politics. The construction of the temple represented the culmination of Israelite religious aspirations, providing a fixed dwelling place for the divine presence that had previously resided in the portable tabernacle. His wisdom was not only practical, but also extended to a deep understanding of the natural world, as described in the biblical accounts. Upon Solomon's death, the deep cracks within the united monarchy became tragically irreparable. His son, Rehoboam, inherited a kingdom simmering with widespread discontent, particularly from the northern tribes, who had long felt marginalized and overtaxed, bearing the brunt of Solomon's labor demands. When the northern tribes, led by Jeroboam, approached him with a reasonable plea to lighten the heavy burdens of taxation and forced labor imposed by his father Rehoboam, unwisely advised by his young and inexperienced counselors who advocated for harshness over compromise, rather than the wisdom of his older, more experienced advisors, responded with an arrogant and dismissive refusal. He famously declared that he would make their yoke even heavier, stating, "My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions," demonstrating a profound lack of empathy and political foresight. This act of political ineptitude and insensitivity proved catastrophic. 10 of the 12 tribes immediately revolted, decisively seceding from the Davidic dynasty and forming their own independent kingdom, known as the Kingdom of Israel, or more commonly, the Northern Kingdom. Only the tribes of Judah and Benjamin remained loyal to Rehoboam, forming the smaller but more stable Kingdom of Judah, or the Southern Kingdom, centered around Jerusalem and the Davidic line, which retained the temple and the promise of an eternal dynasty. This definitive division, occurring around 930 BCE, irrevocably marked the end of the united monarchy and ushered in a new, often antagonistic era of two separate Israelite states, frequently at odds with each other, engaging in border skirmishes and wars, weakening both in the face of external threats and internal divisions, and forever altering the political landscape of the region, making them more vulnerable to larger empires. The division also had profound religious implications, as the Northern Kingdom sought to establish its own religious identity, separate from Jerusalem. This schism fundamentally reshaped the political and religious trajectory of the Israelite people for centuries to come. The economic grievances of the northern tribes, coupled with their historical distinctiveness, provided fertile ground for rebellion against the centralized authority of Jerusalem. the newly formed kingdom of Israel, with its capital eventually established in the strategically important city of Samaria, was plagued by inherent political instability. It witnessed a rapid succession of short-lived dynasties, many of which ended violently through coups, assassinations, and internal power struggles, reflecting a lack of a stable dynastic principle and a cycle of violence and regicide that contrasted sharply with Judah's continuous Davidic line. Its religious practices also diverged significantly from those maintained in Jerusalem. Its first king, Jeroboam, driven by a shrewd political calculation and a fear that pilgrimage to the temple in Jerusalem would lead to renewed loyalty to the Davidic line, established alternative cultic centers at Dan in the far north and Bethel in the south, strategically placed at the kingdom's borders. At these sites, golden calves were set up for worship, ostensibly as symbols of Yahweh, but consistently condemned by later prophets as idolatry and a profound deviation from the true exclusive worship of Yahweh, leading to spiritual decline and a blurring of religious lines, incorporating elements of Canaanite fertility cults and local traditions. The northern kingdom was generally more prosperous agriculturally and strategically located, benefiting from major trade routes, but its chronic political instability and religious syncretism made it inherently vulnerable to external pressures and internal decay, ultimately contributing to its downfall. Major dynasties like the Omrides, including King Omri, who built Samaria as a strong capital, and his infamous son Ahab, along with his Phoenician wife Jezebel, who promoted Baal worship, introduced further foreign cults, notably the worship of Baal, drawing the vehement ire of prophets like Elijah and Elisha, who championed the exclusive worship of Yahweh and challenged the royal authority and its pagan practices, often engaging in dramatic confrontations and miracles. The social injustices of this period, such as Ahab's seizure of Naboth's vineyard, were also fiercely condemned by the prophets, highlighting the moral failings of the monarchy and the exploitation of the common people, demonstrating the prophetic concern for justice and righteousness in society. The Omride dynasty in particular established significant architectural and administrative achievements, but their religious policies were a constant source of conflict with the prophetic movement. The city of Samaria itself, built on a defensible hill, became a symbol of the northern kingdom's power and its eventual demise. The black obelisk of Shalmaneser III, an Assyrian monument, depicts King Jehu of Israel bowing before the Assyrian king, providing external evidence of Israel's vassalage to Assyria. In stark contrast, the kingdom of Judah, centered in the sacred city of Jerusalem, enjoyed significantly greater political stability. The Davidic dynasty, despite occasional periods of weakness and internal challenges, remained unbroken for over 3 centuries, providing a continuous line of kings believed to be divinely sanctioned and embodying the covenant promise to David, which offered a sense of continuity, legitimacy, and divine protection, even in times of crisis. The temple in Jerusalem remained the undisputed central focus of legitimate Yahwistic worship, and while Judah also experienced periods of idolatry, moral decline, and political corruption, there was a consistently stronger emphasis on maintaining the covenant with Yahweh and preserving the pure cult, often led by reforming kings or influential priests and prophets who called for a return to the law and true worship. Its smaller size and more rugged defensible terrain offered some natural protection, but it too faced constant threats from powerful regional empires and internal challenges requiring periods of both military defense and spiritual renewal, often prompted by prophetic warnings and the discovery of ancient law books. Notable kings like Hezekiah and Josiah led significant religious reforms aimed at purifying worship and centralizing it in Jerusalem, destroying local shrines, high places, and removing foreign cultic objects, demonstrating a recurring commitment to the covenant despite periods of apostasy and the influence of foreign cults. The narratives of these kings illustrate the ongoing struggle between faithfulness and deviation, a constant tension between adherence to divine law and the allure of foreign practices, a struggle for the soul of the nation and its unique identity. The presence of the temple and the Davidic covenant provided a powerful ideological anchor for Judah even in its darkest hours. The southern kingdom's relative isolation and its strong religious traditions contributed to its longer survival, compared to its northern counterpart. The royal archives and scribal traditions in Jerusalem also played a crucial role in preserving the kingdom's history and religious texts. During this tumultuous period of the divided monarchy, a remarkable and profoundly influential phenomenon emerged and flourished: prophecy. Figures like the fiery Elijah, who challenged the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel in a dramatic contest of divine power, demonstrating Yahweh's supremacy, his successor Elisha, who performed numerous miracles, and advised kings and commoners, demonstrating God's care for his people, the shepherd. Prophet Amos, who vehemently condemned social injustice and exploitation of the poor by the wealthy elite, speaking of justice rolling down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream, advocating for the marginalized. The deeply compassionate Hosea, who used the metaphor of an unfaithful wife to describe Israel's broken relationship with God, calling for repentance and return with tender love. The visionary Isaiah, who spoke of God's holiness, judgment, and a future messianic kingdom of peace and universal knowledge of God, and the lamenting Jeremiah, who warned of impending doom and suffered greatly for his unpopular message of surrender to Babylon, rising to unparalleled prominence. They acted as divine messengers, fearless social critics, and the moral conscience of the nation, speaking on behalf of God and challenging human authority. They were not simply foretellers of the future, though they often spoke of impending judgment or future restoration. Rather, they were passionate advocates for justice, unwavering righteousness, and absolute loyalty to Yahweh, calling the people back to the covenant and true worship, often challenging the religious establishment and the monarchy. They vehemently condemned rampant idolatry, pervasive social injustice, systemic corruption among the elite, and the cruel oppression of the poor and vulnerable, often speaking directly to the kings and powerful officials, challenging their authority and policies with divine authority, regardless of personal cost. They relentlessly reminded the kings and the people of their sacred covenant obligations, warning of dire divine judgment if they strayed from the path of righteousness, and offering profound hope of restoration and redemption if they genuinely repented and returned to God. Their messages were often confrontational, challenging the powerful and speaking uncomfortable truths to authority, frequently at great personal risk and suffering, sometimes even facing imprisonment, torture, or death for their prophetic witness, embodying their message through their lives. The prophetic books of the Hebrew Bible offer unparalleled insights into the complex social, political, and spiritual landscape of both Israel and Judah during this tumultuous era, providing a unique perspective on the challenges of their time, and the divine perspective on human actions, emphasizing moral accountability and the consequences of disobedience. They articulated a revolutionary vision of ethical monotheism, emphasizing that true worship involved not merely ritualistic observance or sacrificial offerings, but fundamentally righteous living, profound compassion for one's fellow human beings, and an unwavering commitment to justice in all societal interactions. They envisioned a future where God's universal reign would bring peace and justice to all nations, a vision that extended beyond the immediate political realities of Israel and Judah, encompassing a global hope for humanity and a transformed world under divine rule. The prophets also introduced the concept of a remnant, a faithful core that would survive judgment and carry forward God's purposes. Their literary artistry, employing vivid imagery, parables, and poetic verse, made their messages deeply impactful and memorable. The prophetic movement served as a vital check on royal power and a constant reminder of Israel's unique covenant responsibilities. The geopolitical landscape of the ancient Near East was a dynamic arena dominated by the relentless rise and dramatic fall of colossal empires, and the relatively small kingdoms of Israel and Judah were perpetually caught in the destructive cross-currents of these titanic struggles. The first major imperial threat to truly engulf the region came from the Neo-Assyrian Empire, a brutal, highly efficient, and ruthlessly expansionist military machine that swept across the region with terrifying speed and devastating effectiveness. In the 8th century BCE, employing psychological warfare, systematic cruelty, advanced siege technology, and a policy of forced assimilation, their policy of mass deportation and forced resettlement of conquered peoples was a deliberate and calculated strategy designed to break the spirit of resistance, shatter national identities, and prevent future rebellions by mixing populations and dissolving local loyalties, creating a homogenized empire with a centralized administration. The Kingdom of Israel, with its chronic political instability, frequent changes in leadership, and internal divisions, was particularly vulnerable to this overwhelming force. After years of paying onerous tribute and making desperate, ill-fated attempts at rebellion, the Assyrians, under the successive reigns of King Shalmaneser V and later Sargon finally besieged and captured the capital city of Samaria in 722 BCE. The capital fell after a prolonged siege, and a significant portion of the northern Israelite population was forcibly deported to various distant parts of the vast Assyrian Empire, effectively bringing a definitive and tragic end to the independent Kingdom of Israel. These deported tribes are often referred to as the 10 Lost Tribes, their ultimate fate and whereabouts a subject of enduring historical speculation and legendary narratives, symbolizing a profound loss of national identity and continuity, though their descendants likely assimilated into other cultures. The fall of Samaria was a devastating blow, a stark and painful reminder of the dire consequences of failing to uphold the covenant, maintain national unity, and resist external pressures, serving as a chilling cautionary tale for Judah, highlighting the fragility of their existence. Assyrian military innovations, such as the use of iron weapons and specialized siege engines, made them nearly unstoppable. The Lachish reliefs found in Sennacherib's palace at Nineveh graphically depict the Assyrian siege and conquest of the Judean city of Lachish, offering a chilling visual testament to their military might and brutality. The Assyrian annals, written by the kings themselves, provide a valuable external perspective on these conflicts, often complementing or contrasting with the biblical accounts. The kingdom of Judah, though considerably smaller and seemingly less powerful, managed to survive the initial Assyrian onslaught for a time, often by becoming a loyal vassal and paying heavy tribute. Under the pious and reformist King Hezekiah, Jerusalem faced a formidable and seemingly insurmountable Assyrian siege led by the mighty Sennacherib in 701 BCE. The biblical account describes a miraculous deliverance, where the Assyrian army was inexplicably decimated by divine intervention, forcing Sennacherib to withdraw from the gates of Jerusalem without taking the city, after Hezekiah's fervent prayer and Isaiah's prophetic assurance of God's protection. While the precise details of this deliverance are still debated by historians and archaeologists, compelling archaeological evidence, including Sennacherib's own prism, recounting his campaign against Judah, and the discovery of Hezekiah's broad wall in Jerusalem, built to fortify the city in anticipation of the siege, and his water tunnel, Siloam Tunnel, to secure the city's water supply, confirms the extensive siege and Judah's remarkable survival, albeit as a heavily tribute-paying vassal state to the Assyrian Empire. Hezekiah's reign was also marked by significant religious reforms aimed at centralizing all legitimate worship in Jerusalem, destroying local shrines, high places, and systematically eradicating widespread idolatrous practices throughout Judah, a testament to his faithfulness and commitment to Yahweh, earning him praise in the biblical narrative as one of Judah's most righteous kings who returned the nation to covenant fidelity. The Assyrian threat forced Judah to confront its spiritual complacency and rely more deeply on divine providence. The discovery of numerous LMLK jar handles, stamped with royal seals, indicates Hezekiah's extensive preparations for the siege, including the collection and storage of provisions. The Salom inscription, found within Hezekiah's tunnel, provides a rare contemporary Hebrew inscription detailing the engineering feat of its construction. A century later, another pivotal and deeply significant figure emerged in Judah, King Josiah. His reign saw a remarkable period of profound religious revival and sweeping reform. During routine repairs to the neglected temple, a book of the law was miraculously discovered by the high priest Hilkiah, which is widely identified by scholars with a significant portion of the book of Deuteronomy. Its rediscovery sparked an intense and widespread spiritual awakening throughout the kingdom, as the people realized how far they had strayed from God's commands, leading to public repentance and a renewal of the covenant, read aloud by Josiah himself to the entire populace. Josiah immediately initiated a comprehensive program of religious purification, systematically destroying pagan altars, tearing down idolatrous high places, removing cultic objects associated with foreign deities, including those introduced by his grandfather Manasseh, and rigorously centralizing all legitimate worship at the purified temple in Jerusalem, making it the sole legitimate place of sacrifice and pilgrimage, destroying cult sites outside Jerusalem. He passionately sought to bring the entire nation back into full and uncompromising compliance with the terms of the covenant, embodying the highest ideals of ethical monotheism and national piety. His reforms were perhaps the most comprehensive, sincere, and far-reaching efforts to restore the purity of Yahwistic worship in Judah's entire history, a final desperate attempt to avert divine judgment and reclaim their covenant identity, demonstrating a profound commitment to the law and a desire for national righteousness. However, Josiah's promising and transformative reign was tragically cut short when he was killed in battle against the Egyptians at Megiddo, attempting to block their passage to assist Assyria against Babylon. This was a devastating loss that plunged Judah into profound despair and left it critically vulnerable to the inexorable rise of a new and even more formidable imperial power. As the last hope for a righteous king and a lasting spiritual revival was extinguished, paving the way for the ultimate catastrophe. Josiah's reforms represented a high point of covenant renewal, but they could not ultimately prevent the coming judgment. The discovery of the Book of the Law underscored the importance of written scripture as a guide for national life and religious practice. His efforts to extend his authority into the former territory of the northern kingdom also reflected a desire to reunite the Israelite people under Yahwistic worship. That new and ascendant power was the Neo-Babylonian Empire, which swiftly eclipsed both Assyria and Egypt as the undisputed dominant force in the ancient Near East. Under the formidable King Nebuchadnezzar II, Babylon inexorably turned its attention to Judah, viewing it as a rebellious vassal state and a strategic outpost on the route to Egypt. After a series of desperate rebellions, broken treaties, and multiple waves of deportations, including the first in 597 BCE, which took figures like King Jehoiakim, the prophet Ezekiel, and many skilled craftsmen to Babylon, weakening Judah's leadership and capacity for resistance. The inevitable and catastrophic finally occurred. In 586 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar's overwhelming forces laid siege to Jerusalem, ultimately breaching its walls after a prolonged and brutal struggle, marked by famine, disease, and immense suffering. Within the city, as vividly described by the prophet Jeremiah in his laments and historical accounts, the city was utterly destroyed, its defenses dismantled, its houses burned, and its population decimated, leaving it a desolate ruin. The magnificent temple, originally built by Solomon and expanded by later kings, the very symbol of God's presence. And the nation's spiritual heart was razed to the ground, its sacred treasures plundered and carried off to Babylon, including the temple vessels and the Ark of the Covenant, which disappears from history. The Davidic king Zedekiah was captured while attempting to flee, his sons tragically executed before his very eyes, and then he was blinded and led in chains as a prisoner to Babylon, a brutal and symbolic end to the Davidic monarchy in Jerusalem, marking the fulfillment of prophetic warnings and the end of an era. A large portion of the remaining population, including the intellectual, religious, and political elite, the skilled craftsmen, and the wealthy, was forcibly deported to Babylon, leaving only the poorest behind to work the land, a remnant to tend the vineyards and fields. This cataclysmic event, known as the Babylonian exile, was not merely a political defeat or a military conquest. It was a profound theological crisis that shook the very foundations of Israelite faith and identity. The destruction of the sacred temple, the loss of their beloved land, and the definitive end of the Davidic monarchy challenged their deepest convictions. Had God abandoned His people? Was the sacred covenant irrevocably broken? These were agonizing questions that demanded new theological answers and a re-evaluation of their relationship with God, leading to intense introspection and a redefinition of their faith, away from a land-centric and temple-centric understanding towards a more universal and personal spirituality. The Babylonian siege tactics were among the most advanced of the ancient world, employing massive earthworks and battering rams. The Babylonian chronicles provide external historical confirmation of Nebuchadnezzar's campaigns against Judah and the capture of Jerusalem. The discovery of bullae clay seal impressions bearing the names of biblical figures like Gedaliah, a governor appointed by Babylon, further corroborates the historical context of this period. Yet, paradoxically, the Babylonian exile, despite its immense suffering and trauma, proved to be a transformative crucible that refined, deepened, and ultimately strengthened Jewish identity in unprecedented ways. Far from dissolving into the surrounding Babylonian cultures, which were rich and diverse, the exiles found innovative and resilient ways to maintain their distinctiveness and preserve their heritage in a foreign land. Without the physical temple and its sacrificial cult, new forms of worship and communal life emerged. The synagogue, a place for communal prayer, intensive study of the Torah, and spiritual gathering, began to take shape as a vital institution, becoming the new focal point of religious life and communal cohesion, fostering a sense of shared identity away from the land and the temple, adaptable to any location. The emphasis shifted dramatically from animal sacrifices and temple rituals to the meticulous study of the sacred texts, the diligent observance of the Sabbath, a key marker of identity in exile, strict adherence to dietary laws, kashrut, and the preservation of their unique traditions within the family unit and community, fostering a sense of shared heritage and continuity. Scribes and scholars played an absolutely crucial role in collecting, editing, and transmitting the sacred texts, a painstaking process that would eventually lead to the formation of the Hebrew Bible as we know it today, preserving their history, laws, and prophetic messages for future generations. Prophets like Ezekiel offered powerful messages of hope, divine presence even in exile, EOAG, the vision of God's glory departing from the temple but still being with the exiles in Babylon, and future restoration, envisioning a renewed covenant and a glorious return to the land. symbolized by the vision of dry bones coming to life and a new temple. The very experience of exile fostered a deeper, more universal understanding of monotheism, emphasizing God's omnipresence not just in a specific land or within a physical temple, but everywhere, and his universal sovereignty over all nations, a truly revolutionary concept that broadened their theological horizons and prepared them for a global existence. It also intensified their profound longing for Zion, for their beloved homeland, fostering a powerful sense of collective memory and future hope, encapsulated in Psalm 137. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down and wept, when we remembered Zion. The exile was a period of intense introspection, profound theological development, and the hardening of a unique cultural and religious identity that would prove remarkably resilient through millennia of dispersion and adversity, laying the groundwork for Judaism as a portable religion, adaptable to various contexts and circumstances. The development of Aramaic as a common language among the exiles also facilitated communication and cultural exchange within the community. This period also saw the emergence of a stronger emphasis on individual responsibility and a more personal relationship with God as articulated by prophets like Jeremiah and Ezekiel. The concept of Kiddush Hashem, the sanctification of God's name through steadfastness in the face of persecution, gained prominence during this challenging era. The mighty Babylonian Empire, like all empires before it, eventually succumbed to a new power. Its conqueror was Cyrus the Great, the visionary founder of the vast and tolerant Persian Empire. Cyrus, known for his enlightened and remarkably benevolent policies towards conquered peoples, which contrasted sharply with Assyrian and Babylonian brutality, issued a momentous decree around 538 BCE, famously recorded on the Cyrus Cylinder, which allowed various exiled peoples, including the Jews, to return to their ancestral homelands and rebuild their sacred temples. This was an epoch-making event, marking the definitive end of the Babylonian exile and the beginning of the Persian period in Judean history. While not all exiles chose to return, many having established prosperous lives and communities in Babylon, a significant number, filled with fervent hope and profound religious zeal, embarked on the long and arduous journey back to Judah, driven by a deep spiritual longing for Zion and a desire to restore their national and religious life, fulfilling prophetic expectations of return and restoration. The Persian Empire's administrative structure, with its satrapies and emphasis on local governance, provided a stable framework for the returning exiles. Cyrus's policy was a strategic move to gain loyalty from diverse populations and prevent future rebellions, a stark contrast to the previous empire's methods. The Cyrus Cylinder, a clay cylinder inscribed with a declaration in Akkadian kunai form, is often cited as a key piece of evidence for Cyrus's policy of repatriation and religious tolerance. The return to Zion was, however, not without its formidable challenges. The land was desolate, the infrastructure ruined, and the rebuilding efforts were arduous and slow, hampered by economic hardship, scarcity of resources, and internal disagreements among the returnees and those who had remained in the land. The first and foremost priority for the returning exiles was the reconstruction of the temple in Jerusalem. After initial setbacks, internal discouragement, and significant opposition from hostile neighboring peoples like the Samaritans, who offered to help but were rejected, leading to animosity and future schism between the two communities, who feared a resurgent Judean state and sought to undermine their efforts, the Second Temple was finally completed and dedicated around 516 BCE, albeit on a much less grand scale and with less opulence than Solomon's. Original magnificent edifice, leading some elder returnees to weep at the comparison, remembering the former glory. Its completion, though modest, was a moment of immense spiritual significance, symbolizing the restoration of God's presence among His people and the renewal of the covenant, encouraged by prophets like Haggai and Zechariah, who urged the people to prioritize the temple's reconstruction and offered visions of future glory and messianic hope. The economic struggles of the returnees were exacerbated by poor harvests and the need to reestablish agricultural practices in a neglected land. The Samaritans, who claimed a shared heritage, developed their own distinct religious practices and sacred site on Mount Gerizim, further solidifying the schism. The book of Ezra and Nehemiah provide detailed accounts of the challenges faced during this period, including bureaucratic delays and external interference. Two key figures emerged during this crucial post-exilic period, playing absolutely pivotal roles in the reestablishment and spiritual revitalization of the Jewish community: Ezra and Nehemiah. Ezra, a priest and highly esteemed scribe, arrived in Jerusalem with a divine mandate to restore religious purity and enforce strict adherence to the Torah. He led a powerful spiritual revival, publicly reading the law to the assembled people, who, deeply moved, recommitted themselves to its meticulous observance, weeping as they understood its demands and confessed their sins, demonstrating a national repentance and a renewed commitment to the covenant. Ezra's unwavering emphasis on the Torah as the ultimate central authority and guide for life laid the indispensable groundwork for the development of Judaism as a religion uniquely centered on the written word and its authoritative interpretation, moving towards a more text-based faith and the rise of scribal authority. He also initiated social reforms, including the dissolution of mixed marriages to preserve the community's distinct identity and prevent assimilation, a controversial but decisive move to maintain the purity of the covenant people. Nehemiah, a high-ranking and influential official in the Persian court, cupbearer to the king Artaxerxes III, received special permission from the Persian king to return to Jerusalem as governor. His primary and urgent task was to rebuild the city walls, a massive and perilous undertaking that faced significant and persistent opposition from hostile neighbors like Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite, who sought to undermine the community's security and mock their efforts. Nehemiah's exceptional leadership, unwavering determination, and remarkable organizational skills were instrumental in securing Jerusalem, restoring a vital sense of civic pride, and providing much-needed security for the fragile community, even arming the builders with swords for defense against attacks. He also implemented social reforms to alleviate poverty, ensure Sabbath observance, and enforce tithing to support the temple and its priests, demonstrating his commitment to social justice and religious order. Together, Ezra and Nehemiah spearheaded a period of intense religious and social reform, solidifying Jewish identity, emphasizing strict adherence to the law, and meticulously rebuilding the physical and spiritual infrastructure of the community. This period saw the profound strengthening of the concept of the people of the book, with the Torah becoming the ultimate and comprehensive guide for every aspect of life, shaping their distinct cultural and religious practices, and setting the stage for future developments in Judaism, particularly the rise of scribal traditions, the Great Assembly, and the importance of oral law and its interpretation, leading to the Mishnah and Talmud. The establishment of a strong, centralized religious authority under Ezra helped to prevent further spiritual backsliding. The Persian period lasted for nearly 2 centuries, providing a relatively stable and generally benevolent environment for the Jewish community to flourish under Persian suzerainty, allowing for internal self-governance under the high priest and governor. This era allowed for the continued development of religious traditions, the growth of the synagogue as a local center of worship and study, and the ongoing compilation and codification of sacred texts, including much of the Hebrew Bible, which was gradually formalized and canonized, becoming the authoritative scripture for the Jewish people. However, the geopolitical landscape was once again poised to undergo a seismic and transformative shift with the meteoric rise of a new and formidable power from the west, Greece. In the late 4th century BCE, the brilliant and ambitious military genius Alexander the Great swept across the ancient world with astonishing speed, conquering the vast Persian Empire in a series of lightning campaigns that reshaped the known world from Greece to India, establishing a new global order. His conquests ushered in the Hellenistic Age, a transformative period characterized by the widespread dissemination and profound influence of Greek language, Koine Greek becoming the lingua franca of the Eastern Mediterranean. Culture, philosophy, art, and political ideas across the immense territories he controlled. For the Jewish community in Judea, this meant direct and unavoidable exposure to Hellenism, a vibrant, sophisticated, and immensely influential culture that presented both unprecedented opportunities for cultural exchange and profound challenges to their deeply held religious and cultural identity, forcing them to grapple with assimilation and the preservation of their unique way of life in a rapidly changing cosmopolitan world. Alexander's vision of a unified Hellenistic world brought both intellectual stimulation and cultural pressure to the diverse peoples he conquered. The establishment of Greek cities throughout the Near East, like Alexandria in Egypt, became centers of learning and commerce, further integrating the region into the Hellenistic sphere. The Hellenistic period also saw the rise of new literary genres within Judaism, such as apocalyptic literature, which offered hope and meaning in times of foreign domination. After Alexander's premature and unexpected death, his vast empire was tragically divided among his leading generals, known as the Diadochi, leading to the establishment of several powerful Hellenistic kingdoms. Judea initially came under the control of the Ptolemaic dynasty, based in Egypt, which generally adopted a more benevolent and hands-off approach, allowing the Jewish community considerable autonomy in their internal affairs and religious practices, often through the high priest, who served as both religious and political leader. It was during this period that the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, was produced in Alexandria, Egypt, a testament to the growing influence of Greek language among diaspora Jews and a crucial development for later Christian scripture, making the Jewish texts accessible to a wider Greek-speaking world. However, in the early 2nd century BCE, control of Judea dramatically shifted to the Seleucid dynasty, based in Syria, after the Battle of Panium, a decisive victory for Antiochus III. The Seleucid rulers, particularly the notorious Antiochus IV Epiphanes, pursued a far more aggressive and coercive policy of Hellenization, actively attempting to impose Greek culture, religious practices, and social norms on their diverse subjects, including the Jews, aiming for cultural uniformity and the suppression of distinct traditions. This policy clashed directly and violently with the deeply held monotheistic beliefs and unique covenantal practices of the Jews, leading to escalating tension, widespread resentment, and ultimately open rebellion against what was perceived as an existential threat to their faith and identity, a struggle for religious and cultural survival that would define the era. The Ptolemaic period saw a flourishing of Jewish intellectual life in Alexandria, where the Septuagint translation was a monumental scholarly undertaking. The Seleucid pressure for Hellenization was driven by a desire to consolidate their empire and extract resources, viewing Jewish distinctiveness as an obstacle. Antiochus IV's self-proclaimed title, Epiphanes, God Manifest, further highlighted his hubris and his direct challenge to Jewish monotheism. Antiochus IV's actions culminating in the egregious desecration of the temple in Jerusalem by dedicating it to Zeus Olympios, sacrificing pigs on its altar, and brutally forbidding essential Jewish religious practices such as Sabbath observance, circumcision, and the study of the Torah, sparked the momentous Maccabean revolt in 167 BCE. Led by the priestly Hasmonean family, particularly the courageous Judah Maccabee, the Hammer, The revolt was a remarkable and desperate struggle for religious freedom and national independence against a powerful imperial force. Against seemingly overwhelming odds, the Maccabees achieved a series of stunning military victories, employing guerrilla tactics, religious fervor, and a deep knowledge of the terrain, culminating in the joyous rededication of the temple in 164 BCE, an event still celebrated with profound joy and light today as Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights, commemorating the miracle of the oil and the triumph of faith over oppression. The Maccabean revolt led to the establishment of an independent Hasmonean kingdom, the first truly independent Jewish state in the land of Israel in over 4 centuries. This period of independence, lasting for approximately 80 years, saw the Hasmoneans expand their territory, consolidate their power, and even forcibly convert some neighboring populations, such as the Idumeans, and destroy the Samaritan temple on Mount Gerizim, reflecting a complex mix of religious zeal and political ambition, often leading to internal conflicts and territorial disputes. However, internal dynastic struggles, bitter political intrigue, and the gradual Hellenization of even the Hasmonean rulers themselves eventually weakened the kingdom from within, leading to civil wars and leaving it critically vulnerable to the next great imperial power that was rapidly expanding its dominion across the Mediterranean. This period also saw the emergence of distinct Jewish sects like the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes, each with differing views on the law, temple, and proper Jewish life, contributing to internal fragmentation and ideological debates that would shape future Judaism. The Hasmonean dynasty, while achieving independence, also faced criticism for combining the roles of high priest and king, a departure from traditional Israelite governance. The book of Daniel, written during this period, reflects the intense persecution and the hope for divine intervention. The Maccabean victory demonstrated the power of religious conviction in motivating a people to fight for their identity. That burgeoning power was Rome. By the mid-1st century BCE, the formidable Roman Republic was relentlessly expanding its influence throughout the eastern Mediterranean, absorbing kingdom after kingdom into its vast sphere. Internal conflicts and bitter succession disputes within the Hasmonean dynasty provided a convenient pretext and an irresistible opportunity for Roman intervention. In 63 BCE, the renowned Roman general Pompey the Great captured Jerusalem, effectively ending Jewish independence and decisively incorporating Judea into the burgeoning Roman sphere of influence. This marked the definitive beginning of the Roman Lace period in Judean history, an era that would be characterized by increasing Roman control, heavy taxation, and growing Jewish resistance to foreign domination. While the Romans initially allowed a degree of local autonomy, they appointed client kings to govern the region, the most famous and controversial of whom was Herod the Great. Herod, an Idumean by birth but Jewish by religion, was a cunning, ruthless, and politically astute ruler who maintained power through a brutal combination of political skill, military might, and a series of lavish and monumental building projects, including the magnificent expansion and beautification of the Second Temple, which became one of the architectural wonders of the ancient world, and the construction of impressive fortresses like Masada and Herodium, and the major port city of Caesarea Maritima, a Roman-style city. Despite his impressive architectural achievements and his efforts to secure the region, Herod was deeply unpopular with many Jews due to his cruelty, his overt Hellenistic leanings, his heavy taxation, and his undeniable subservience to Rome, which compromised his legitimacy in their eyes, leading to constant resentment and simmering rebellion against his rule and his successors. Roman administrative practices, including the census and direct taxation, were deeply resented by the Jewish population. Herod's reign, though economically prosperous, was marked by paranoia and brutal suppression of any perceived threats to his power, including the execution of members of his own family. The Roman policy of Pax Romana, while bringing a degree of stability, also meant the suppression of local autonomy and the imposition of foreign rule. The Roman period was characterized by escalating tensions and frequent clashes between the fiercely independent Jewish population and their Roman overlords. Different Jewish sects, which had emerged during the Hasmonean period, continued to evolve and define themselves in response to Roman rule and the changing religious landscape. The Pharisees, a popular lay movement, emphasized the importance of oral law, personal piety, and the meticulous observance of Torah by all Jews, seeking to make holiness accessible beyond the priesthood and adapt Judaism for a future without the temple. The Sadducees, an aristocratic priestly class, were focused on temple rituals, the written law, and maintaining the status quo, often cooperating with Roman authorities to preserve their power and privileges. The Essenes, a separatist and ascetic community, withdrew from mainstream society, devoted to purity, communal living, and the study of sacred texts, often anticipating an apocalyptic end and the coming of a messianic figure, as evidenced by the Dead Sea Scrolls. And various revolutionary groups, often referred to as zealots, advocated for armed resistance and immediate rebellion against Roman rule, believing that God would intervene to liberate them through force. And groups like the Sicarii engaged in targeted assassinations of both Romans and Jewish collaborators, escalating the violence and internal divisions within Jewish society. The oppressive Roman presence, the heavy taxation, the cultural clashes, and the deep-seated desire for national and religious freedom eventually boiled over into open and devastating rebellion. The Roman procurators who governed Judea directly after Herod's death often showed little understanding or respect for Jewish religious sensitivities, further fueling unrest. The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in the Qumran caves, provide invaluable primary source material for understanding the diverse religious landscape of Second Temple Judaism, including the beliefs of the Essenes. The Roman legal system, while advanced, was seen by many Jews as an affront to divine law and their unique covenantal relationship with God. The First Jewish-Roman War erupted in 66 CE. It was a brutal, protracted, and utterly devastating conflict that lasted for several years, marked by immense suffering, widespread destruction, and acts of desperate heroism. Despite initial Jewish successes and acts of fierce resistance, including the capture of Masada, the Jewish rebels were ultimately no match for the disciplined might, superior organization, and overwhelming numbers of the Roman legions. In 70 CE, under the command of General Titus, the Romans laid siege to Jerusalem. After a prolonged and horrific siege, marked by famine, disease, and internal strife among the defenders, the city finally fell, and the magnificent Second Temple, the spiritual heart of Judaism for over 5 centuries, was utterly destroyed, just as the First Temple had been by the Babylonians, fulfilling prophetic warnings of doom and marking a profound turning point in Jewish history. The destruction of the Second Temple was an even more profound and traumatic catastrophe than the First Exile, as it removed the central institution of Jewish worship and national identity, forcing a radical transformation of Judaism. It marked the definitive end of the ancient Israelite state as a sovereign entity in the land of Israel for nearly 2 millennia. While a small Jewish presence miraculously remained in the land, the primary center of Jewish life shifted increasingly. To the diaspora, the vibrant communities scattered across the vast Roman Empire and beyond, where new forms of Jewish life flourished and adapted, developing new institutions and practices. The temple's destruction forced Judaism to adapt once again, evolving into a rabbinic Judaism focused on the synagogue as a place of worship and study, personal prayer, and the intensive study of the Torah and Talmud, rather than temple sacrifices, and priestly rituals, ensuring the survival and evolution of the faith and its traditions without a central sanctuary. The last major Jewish rebellion against Rome, the Bar Kokhba revolt, 130–135 CE, was also brutally suppressed by Rome, leading to further devastation, mass casualties, and the Roman Emperor Hadrian's policies of renaming Judea to Syria Palestina and building a Roman city, Aelia Capitolina, on the ruins of Jerusalem, forbidding Jews from entering, further solidifying the diaspora as the primary mode of Jewish existence and ensuring that the memory of ancient Israel would be preserved. Through text, tradition, and community, not through a continuous political state in the land, the Arch of Titus in Rome still stands as a triumphal monument commemorating the Roman victory and the spoils taken from Jerusalem. The fall of Masada in 73 CE, where Jewish defenders chose mass suicide over surrender, became a powerful symbol of resistance and sacrifice. The Roman historian Josephus, a Jewish general who defected to the Romans, provides invaluable, albeit biased, eyewitness accounts of the Jewish-Roman War. So, what then is the enduring and transformative legacy of ancient Israel? Its profound impact on human civilization is simply immeasurable and continues to reverberate across the globe. First and foremost, ancient Israel gave the world the revolutionary concept of ethical monotheism. While other ancient cultures worshipped numerous gods, often capricious, localized, and anthropomorphic, the Israelite belief in one singular, transcendent, all-powerful, and universal God who is also inherently righteous, just, and demands moral behavior from humanity was truly groundbreaking. This God was not merely a tribal deity, but the creator and sustainer of the entire universe, who entered into a unique covenant relationship with humanity and demanded justice, compassion, faithfulness, and ethical conduct in all aspects of life, not just ritualistic observance. This profound concept laid the indispensable theological and ethical foundation for all three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which together encompass billions of adherents worldwide, shaping their core beliefs, morals, codes, and visions of the divine. The idea that God is concerned with human morality, social justice, and the treatment of the vulnerable, particularly the poor and marginalized, is a direct and powerful inheritance from ancient Israelite prophecy and law, a radical notion in the ancient world that challenged existing power structures and called for a more just society. The emphasis on a personal relationship with the divine, rather than merely appeasing deities through ritual, marked a significant spiritual evolution. This unique understanding of God as both transcendent and immanent, just and merciful, provided a framework for a moral universe. The concept of imago Dei, that humanity is created in the image of God, instilled an inherent dignity in every individual regardless of social status. Secondly, ancient Israel bequeathed to humanity an unparalleled collection of holy scriptures that have profoundly shaped Western thought, ethics, law, literature, and art. The Hebrew Bible, or what Christians refer to as the Old Testament, is a literary masterpiece of unparalleled religious and cultural significance, containing a rich tapestry of history, intricate law, sublime poetry, like the Psalms expressing the full range of human emotion from despair to exultation, often used in worship, and personal devotion. Powerful prophecy, profound wisdom literature, like Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job, grappling with life's deepest questions of suffering and meaning, offering practical advice and philosophical reflection, and timeless moral teachings. Its compelling narratives, unforgettable characters, from Abraham to David to Esther, and deep theological insights have permeated countless works of art, monumental musical compositions, oratorios, symphonies, and enduring literary masterpieces. across diverse cultures and centuries, providing archetypes, moral dilemmas, and narratives of redemption that continue to inspire and resonate with human experience. Its ethical principles, emphasizing justice for the vulnerable, compassion for the stranger, care for the widow and orphan, and the sanctity of life, continue to influence legal systems, moral philosophies, and human rights discourse around the globe, forming a bedrock for universal values and inspiring social movements for justice and equality. Concepts like the covenant, divine law, the importance of prophecy as a call for justice and repentance, and the enduring hope for a messianic age of peace, universal knowledge of God, and redemption originated or were profoundly developed within ancient Israelite thought, offering a vision of a redeemed future for all humanity that transcends political boundaries and speaks to universal human longings for a better world. The narrative structure of the Hebrew Bible, with its emphasis on historical progression and divine purpose, also set a precedent for later historical writing. The literary sophistication of texts, like the Song of Songs or the Book of Job, demonstrates a profound engagement with human experience and philosophical inquiry. The meticulous process of textual transmission and canonization ensured the preservation of these sacred writings for future generations. The very idea of a people defined not solely by territory or political power, but by a shared history, a unique covenant with God, and an unwavering commitment to a specific set of laws and traditions, is another remarkably enduring legacy. This revolutionary concept of identity allowed the Jewish people, the direct descendants of ancient Israel, to survive centuries of dispersion, relentless persecution, and statelessness, miraculously maintaining their distinct cultural and religious heritage against all conceivable odds. Their story is a powerful testament to unparalleled resilience, remarkable adaptability, and an unwavering, profound commitment to their ancestral faith and heritage. A testament to the power of shared narrative, collective memory, and a divinely ordained purpose that transcends geographical boundaries and political fortunes. The development of Rabbinic Judaism, with its emphasis on study, prayer, communal life, and the interpretation of sacred texts, like the Mishnah and Talmud, ensured the continuation of this identity even without a central temple or a sovereign land, demonstrating the power of spiritual and intellectual continuity over physical presence. This unique model of identity has influenced countless other diasporic communities throughout history, providing a blueprint for cultural and religious preservation in challenging circumstances. The concept of tikkun olam, repairing the world, rooted in prophetic calls for justice, continues to motivate Jewish engagement in social action globally. The emphasis on education and literacy, particularly for the study of Torah, became a defining characteristic of Jewish communities worldwide. The annual cycle of festivals and fasts, commemorating historical events and theological truths, further reinforced this collective identity across generations and geographies. Furthermore, the ongoing and exciting archaeological discoveries in the land of Israel continue to shed invaluable light on the ancient world, often corroborating or illuminating aspects of the biblical narrative, while also providing a broader and more nuanced context for understanding the daily lives, material, culture, social structures, and complex interactions of the people of ancient Israel. From the unearthed ruins of ancient cities like Megiddo, Hazor, and Gezer, which reveal layers of destruction and rebuilding consistent with ancient conflicts and settlement patterns, to the deciphered pottery shards, ostraca, bearing ancient Hebrew inscriptions, like the Lachish letters, providing glimpses into daily life, military communications, and the use of Hebrew script. Inscribed seals, like that of King Hezekiah's servant, confirming biblical figures and administrative practices, monumental stelae, such as the Merneptah stele, which contains the earliest extra-biblical mention of Israel, in the late 13th century BCE, and the Teldan stele, which mentions the House of David in the 9th century BCE, offering crucial external corroborations of biblical dynasties. The dramatic Lachish reliefs depicting the Assyrian siege of that city, found in Sennacherib's palace, illustrating the brutality of ancient warfare and the Assyrian military machine, and the revolutionary Dead Sea Scrolls that preserve ancient biblical and sectarian texts from the Second Temple period, providing unparalleled insight into Jewish thought and textual transmission before the destruction of the temple, including the earliest copies of many biblical books. Each new discovery adds another crucial layer to our ever-deepening understanding of this complex, vibrant, and profoundly influential civilization. These tangible remnants connect us directly to the people and events we've discussed, making their history feel more immediate, more real, and more accessible, fostering an ongoing dynamic dialogue between archaeology and biblical studies, enriching our comprehension of this pivotal era, and challenging us to continually refine our understanding of its historical and cultural context. The discovery of everyday artifacts, such as oil lamps, pottery, and tools, provides intimate glimpses into the domestic lives of ancient Israelites. The Ketef Hinnom amulets, containing the earliest known biblical texts, parts of the priestly blessing from Numbers, offer tangible evidence of early scriptural use and religious practice. Ongoing excavations at sites like the City of David continue to reveal new insights into the urban development of ancient Jerusalem. In essence, ancient Israel, despite its relatively small geographical size and its tumultuous, often tragic history, was an unparalleled powerhouse of theological ideas, spiritual innovation, and cultural resilience. It gave birth to a unique and transformative understanding of God, humanity, and the intricate relationship between them, emphasizing a personal, an ethical divine being who intervenes in history and demands righteousness from humanity. It developed a profound and enduring ethical system rooted in divine command, social justice, and personal responsibility, which continues to challenge societies today to strive for righteousness and compassion in their dealings. It forged a remarkably resilient identity that transcended political boundaries and endured through millennia of challenges, dispersion, and adversity, a testament to the power of faith and communal solidarity. The powerful echoes of its prophets, the profound wisdom of its kings, the harrowing struggles of its people, and the enduring power of its sacred texts continue to shape our world in countless ways, inviting us to reflect on fundamental questions of faith, identity, justice, morality, and humanity's enduring place in the grand, unfolding tapestry of existence. Their story is not merely a historical account confined to the past. It is a living, breathing narrative that continues to inspire, challenge, and inform us to this very day, offering timeless lessons and profound insights into the human condition, demonstrating the enduring power of ideas over empires and the resilience of a people bound by covenant and shared purpose. The concept of a linear history, moving towards a divine purpose, also emerged powerfully from Israelite thought, influencing Western historical perspectives. The enduring Jewish commitment to memory, learning, and the pursuit of justice stands as a living testament to this ancient heritage. The very act of storytelling, central to Israelite identity, ensured that their experiences and beliefs would be passed down through generations, forming a continuous chain of tradition. Thank you so very much for joining me on this incredibly extensive and deeply immersive journey through the fascinating world of ancient Israel. I sincerely hope you found it as enlightening, thought-provoking, and enriching as I did in preparing it for you. If you truly enjoyed this deep dive and appreciate the effort involved, please remember to hit that like button, share this video with others who might find it equally captivating, and of course, subscribe to the channel for more in-depth content like this. Your engagement and support genuinely make a tremendous difference and allow us to continue exploring the boundless wonders of our shared past.